Welcome to the What's New in ArcGIS QuickCapture session. My name's John Hasthorpe and I'm a product engineer on the QuickCapture team. In terms of an agenda, I'm going to take you through the following. An overview of the QuickCapture product. We'll cover some foundational concepts so you understand how QuickCapture works. We'll take a look at some key features that you need to know about when creating your own projects. And then we'll take a look at what's new in version 1.9 and what's coming in future releases. The point of difference with QuickCapture in comparison to other Esri field apps is that it's a big button mobile application. Where Field Maps is all about map-centric workflows, Survey 123 is about form-centric workflows. QuickCapture is all about the big buttons. The user simply taps on a button to capture an observation, and that observation then gets automatically uploaded to ArcGIS. So it can be visualized in maps and applications and power your dashboards. And this makes it really simple for the end user. You can simply hand someone the device, and irrespective of their age or technical ability, they can start capturing data. And even kids can use it. QuickCapture can really be a great starter or gateway application, especially for users that have never used any of the ArcGIS applications before. And as a result of its simplicity, the app is extremely well suited for at-speed or rapid data collection workflows, where the user can't spend much time looking at the phone screen. They just want to tap a button and go. And customers are using QuickCapture across a range of industries for a range of different applications. To provide some examples, we have public safety, where it's being used for windshield and rapid damage assessments. In utilities, it's being used for pipeline and power line patrols. Conservation, we're seeing it used for invasive species mapping. In transport, for at-speed asset inventories, and much, much more. QuickCapture is two parts. It is a big button mobile application that runs on mobile devices, that is cross-platform, so runs on iOS, Android, and Windows. It works online and offline and works against your ArcGIS Online organization or ArcGIS Enterprise. And then the second part is the web designer, and this is used to author your QuickCapture projects. The online version can be accessed through www.arcgis.com/apps/QuickCapture or the app launcher within your organization. And this can be used against both your online or enterprise organizations. Additionally, from ArcGIS Enterprise 10.8, the designer is actually bundled in with the installation. This means that you can work disconnected and don't need to use the online version. The only issue with this is that the bundled version is always going to be one or more versions behind the online version, as it is limited by the enterprise release cycle. So a bit on licensing. Hopefully you're aware, just like apps such as Survey 123, QuickCapture Mobile is included with the field worker user type and above, or as an optional add-on license if you have an editor user type. Additionally, if you want to create and share your QuickCapture projects publicly for crowdsourcing activities, for example, then you'll need an ArcGIS Hub premium license. This means that a user can download and use a project without having to sign in. In QuickCapture, tapping on a button captures a type of observation. For example, one button could capture an evergreen tree and another a deciduous tree. In ArcGIS, observations are represented as features, and these features are submitted to feature layers. For example, I may have a tree layer, and if I added this layer to a map or dashboard, I'd be able to see all the tree features that had been submitted to it. In ArcGIS, features have a geometry type, either point, line, or polygon, and that's defined by the layer. They have a geometry, they have attributes, i.e. fields that allow different values, numbers, text, etc. Again, this is defined by the layer. and they have attribute values, and these attributes really define the type of feature. As tapping on a button in QuickCapture creates features, if you want to create different feature types, then you need to create different buttons. Let's take a look at some examples. When the user taps on the coniferous button, we create a new feature. The feature's geometry is set by the location of the device, and the attribute values are fixed. When the user taps on the broadleaf button, the same, but the type value is different. If the layer is symbolized by type, then both feature types will display differently when displayed in the map. A similar story with lines. Essentially, you can create a button to capture each type of feature you want. All the user has to do is pick the right button, tap it, and then go. The work in QuickCapture is done by the author. They make the decisions so the end user doesn't have to. They must configure what layer a button is pointing to and what values are written to the attributes of the captured record, and make sure that these buttons are clear and well organized within the project. How do you create QuickCapture projects and configure buttons? As mentioned, layers define geometry and attributes. The starting point of a QuickCapture project is therefore a feature layer, and the designer will build a project around the layer or layers that you select. Feature layers can be created in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Pro. You just need to make sure that your layers have the right attributes and capabilities that you need before you start. The designer will automatically create and style buttons by reading the layer symbology, but the project author can then override both the appearance and behavior of each button. When ready, the author can share the project with the org, groups, or make it public, and can easily distribute using QR codes, links, or access codes. I should also highlight the template workflow. Here, the layers and projects are created by the designer using templates. These templates can come from your organization or Esri and offer both inspiration and a quick start. The author can then modify the created project if and as required. So I'm going to take you through the process of creating a project in the QuickCapture Designer. We're going to create a project for use by the police to report activities throughout the day. This is the feature layer that we're going to use. You can see that it's been symbolized based on activity and also has the following attributes. It has a field for the officer ID or name, the activity that we've used to symbolize it, speed, direction of travel, and then we've got a date and time of the report too. We've also got a free text field for notes, and we've enabled attachments. So the key thing here is that you need to make sure that your layer contains the fields that you want to update using the QuickCapture application before you create your project. So once the layer is ready, you sign into the QuickCapture Designer and go New Project, Start from Existing Layers. Here you can see the layers that you own or have been shared with you, and you can select one or more layers to add to your project. In this case, we're just going to use the layer that we were looking at within the web map. So click Next, configure the metadata, so the thumbnail, the title, data recovery email, and also the folder you want to save the project to, and then click Create. So on creation, the designer will look at that feature layer and all of the different symbol types, and then create a button for each of those types. And you can see that both the icons and labels have been pulled through from the layer to update the appearance of the buttons. And likewise, the layer name of the feature layer has been used to label the group that the buttons are contained within. This is a great first start by the designer, but as the author, you can go in and update the look and feel or appearance of any of the buttons within the project. So in this case, I'm going to go in and select them all, and I'm going to make the edges rounded. I'm going to reduce the size so we can fit more buttons on the screen. And then for the on duty and off duty buttons, I'm going to add a fill and apply a border. like that. If you click on a button, apart from the Appearance tab, you can also access the Data tab, and this shows you the layer that the button is targeting or where those features are going to be sent to. Additionally, you can see all the fields within the feature layer and determine how they should be updated when a button is pressed. You can use fixed values, device variables, or user inputs to update these fields. For example, you can see the activity. So this was the field that we used to symbolize the layer, is populated with a different value depending on the button. So with the interdiction, you can see that we write interdiction to the activity field. For collision, we write collision to the activity field. And the key thing to appreciate is that each button can write different bits of information to each of these fields. So to wrap up this project, and before sharing it with the team, we're just going to select them all and set the speed to be a device variable of speed in kilometers per hour. The activity we won't touch. And for the police officer, we'll use the username variable. And for date and time of the report, we'll use the capture time variable. And then we'll save the project. Once saved, we want to, of course, share it. So we'll go into the sharing tab. And in this case, I'm going to share the project with the organization. Okay. Once shared, we can distribute the project using links or even QR codes. Minimize my browser so you can see the QuickCapture mobile device. And I'm going to press the plus button, scan QR code, and that will allow me to download the project and open it ready for capturing data. So I'm going to press the on duty button to capture a record indicating I'm on duty. And then when I attend a collision, I'll tap the collision button. In the map, I can view and review my captured records, and then I can either send them from the map manually, or I can wait until the auto upload interval kicks in and they're sent automatically to ArcGIS without any user interaction required. And of course, we can go in and view the results in the web map. And you can see that was the first record I captured. So police officer, that's the signed in user. The activity is on duty. We have speed in kilometers per hour calculated by the device. The direction of travel, 97.90 degrees. And then we have the capture time as well. And likewise for the collision incident, we have all those attributes populated, but of course the activity is collision. Back to the designer, I'll make a further modification and just show you how we can update projects. So for the collision button, it may make sense to allow the officer to take a photo. So we can enable photos and set whether or not the photo is required or optional. In this case, we'll make it required so that the officer has to take a photo. We can optionally hide the camera preview if you don't want the user to be able to see the viewfinder for rapid photo capture. And we can set the location of the captured feature to be either the location when the button was pressed or the location when the photo was captured. So for this case, we'll just keep it as required. Click Save, and then we'll return to the device. So I'm just going to close the project, and you can see that the mobile application knows there's an update available. So we're going to update it. And this time you can see that the collision button is now photo enabled. So when we press it, the camera is launched and I'm able to take a photo. Click Done. And then once more, we can either wait for the upload cycle to kick in or send it straight away from the map. And then if we want to view the captured attachment, We can view that in the pop-up. Next, I want to run through some key QuickCapture features. The first is nested data capture. So a unique feature of QuickCapture is that multiple buttons can be active in capturing features or vertices at the same time. In this example, we have a project configured to capture bike paths, both left and right as lines, sidewalks, again, left and right as lines, and pedestrian crossing and traffic lights as points. Essentially, you can have multiple line buttons active at the same time, and the point buttons can be captured or pressed independently. Once captured and sent, we can view those submitted records or features in the map. Each layer has been symbolized by type. Here we have the traffic lights and pedestrian crossing features, and if we turn on bike trails, you can then see the bike trails with a feature for the right and a feature for the left side where we were capturing. Finally, we can switch on the sidewalks. Again, we have features for left and features for right, and in this case, they are overlapping. In other situations, it may not make sense to have two or more buttons active at the same time. For example, if you have buttons for trail difficulty, you would never want the easy and hard button active at the same time. Exclusive groups allow authors to enforce this. They can create a group and then add buttons to it. Only one button in the group can be active at the same time. In this example project, we have buttons for surface condition, good, degraded, and poor. If I start capturing good, for example, then any other active button will automatically stop, and then the good button will start capturing. And here are the captured features. You can see we have the section of good, and then straight afterwards, without a gap, a section for partially degraded. And next up, we have poor. In the designer, you can define what attribute values are captured when a button is pressed. These can be fixed values such as categories, user inputs entered by the user, or device variables calculated by the app when a button is pressed. Example variables include speed, direction of travel, capture time, username, but the list is growing as new functionality comes on board. Just to work through an example, here we have the tree button again. I tap on it. The geometry is taken from the XY of the device, and the type, color, and height fields have fixed values defined in the project. And coniferous, green, and 20 are written to the respective fields of the captured feature. But this time we have a speed attribute. In QuickCapture, variables have the $curly bracket syntax. When the button is tapped, $open curly bracket speed kph close curly bracket is replaced with the speed of travel for the device. And this is the value that is ultimately written to the speed attribute. In this case, the phone is in a vehicle, so we're traveling 70 kilometers per hour along the road. And to show you another example, here we have the car part button. The feature has a fixed value of car part and a speed of 70 because the device was traveling at that speed when the button was pressed. Additional to fixed values and device variables are user inputs. User inputs provide the functionality to allow users to add additional information to the captured feature when the button is pressed. Let's start with project user inputs. In this case, the project opens, a dialog shows, and the user enters a cost center. The cost center is then stored. The user then taps on a button to capture a tree, and the cost center attribute is updated with the stored value. Another example of this, here we open the project, enter an officer name, and the officer name is then written to the officer field of each feature that's subsequently captured. So I'm going to show you how to configure project user inputs. First of all, go into additional settings and project user input. add to create one from scratch. In this case, we'll create a project user input for the officer ID. This will be of type single line. It could be multi-line, or it could be a choice list that you define within the project. But as I say, this one's going to be a single line text. We will add a hint, which will be to enter your ID. We'll put in an input mask to restrict it to be 4 long, and we'll make it required so that the officer has to enter the ID, otherwise they're unable to open the project and capture information. The next thing that we need to do is to map the project user input to the buttons and field that you want to update. So let's go to the police officer field and change it from the variable to the user input, or the project user input. And then let's click save. So after the update, this time when we open the project user input UI appears, and I'm unable to enter text because of the input mask, but I can enter numbers and have to enter the full 4 numbers dictated by the input mask before I can proceed. So we'll click done, and then every feature that's subsequently captured will have the police officer ID written to the officer field in the captured feature. Some additional things to note on project user inputs: the user can edit them at any time if they need to, and the project user input can only be applied to fields without domains. Let's now take a look at button user inputs. This is the input that appears after a project button is tapped. In this case, the user taps on a tree button, then the input shows, and they can enter the height value in as a measurement. The height value is written to the height attribute of the captured feature. Another example, when I see 1 or more plastic bottles, I tap on the bottle button, and then I can enter a count of the number of bottles that I saw. So in terms of implementation, the project author must select the button and attribute that they want to update. This is the starting point. Again, they need to decide whether or not the input is required or optional, and they can optionally apply input masks if appropriate. Other things to note is that the UI shown to the end user is determined by the attribute being updated and whether domains are applied. Domains, range, and coded value are both supported and will be viewable to the author and also the user of the application. And also only one button user input can be applied to a QuickCapture project button, no more than that. So in this case, we'll just do a single button for civil disturbance. And the starting point for a button user input is actually the button. So if we go to the Data tab, and then in this case, we'll go to the Notes field. And here you've got the option to create a button user input by simply going Create New and giving it a label. So the label will be Notes. We'll have that as a multi-line text. The hint will be enter your notes. And then we'll make this input optional so that the user doesn't have to enter it if they've got nothing to write. And then we'll click Create and Save. And in the updated project, tapping the civil disturbance button will now provide a notes option where the user can enter their notes or skip accordingly. And any notes will be written to the notes attribute of the captured feature. So link buttons are just like normal buttons in terms of appearance, but instead of creating features, they call URLs. Simple, but really powerful. You can use URLs to access resources like web pages and PDFs to help guide the project user, web apps and dashboards to view incidents and submissions, and native apps to complete multi-app workflows. Link buttons can turn QuickCapture projects into launch pads. In this pipeline project, we have buttons that capture features and buttons that launch Survey 123 smart forms for capturing more detailed information about hazards. You can even launch a dashboard to see the hazards that have been submitted by the user and other users. What makes link buttons even more powerful is the fact that many apps, both web and native, support URL parameters. This means that, for example, instead of just launching a web map, you can launch a web map and center it on a particular coordinate. Instead of just launching Survey 123, you can launch Survey 123 and download the Detailed Asset Inspection Survey, again, for example. In the designer, you can use device variables and project user inputs to manually construct your URLs, or you can use the Survey 123 integration to configure which survey a button will launch and how specific survey questions will be pre-populated for the end user. And I just want to make you aware of the fact that you can use links to launch your phone and text messaging applications. All you need to do is use the appropriate URL. I should also point out that these URLs support parameters. So for example, with the email here, you can specify the recipient email, the email subject, and also the email body, all within that URL. Here we're talking about a technology called webhooks. If you enable webhooks for a layer in your project, then each time a record is uploaded, the mobile app will call that webhook URL, passing through a representation of the captured feature at the same time. When a webhook is called, something can happen. Either an email could be sent for each high priority incident that was submitted. Perhaps the submitted feature could be enriched with information from another layer, or even features and attachments could be copied to file storage. You have two options for configuring webhooks in QuickCapture. If you already have a webhook URL, maybe from a custom enterprise implementation, or perhaps you have a webhook provider that creates them for you, then all you need to do is go to project settings in the designer and enter that URL along with the feature layer and the event data that you want to include in the payload. This event data can include information on the submitted record, project details, response from the server, user information, and even portal information. If you make this event data available, it means that you can include it in your webhook scenarios. For example, you could use the incident category and capture or upload time in any email that you send. Option 2 is this simple option, and that is to use the Integra Mac Connector. With this, you can sign into Integra Mac, access all your QuickCapture projects and layers, and configure your webhooks and create your scenarios. You can define a map for use in each of your projects. These maps are used for reviewing unsent data before you upload it to ArcGIS, editing the locations of features just after they're captured, and even viewing features submitted by other users or members of the team. The default map is the default base map used by organization, but you can change it to any online web map or offline mobile map package, vector tile package, or tile package you like. If you create a web map and include the same layers as you use within the project, and then use this web map as the base map for your project, you'll be able to see the submitted data after it's been sent from the device. You can also enable split screen for a project, meaning that if you open the project on a tablet device, you'll be able to see both the project buttons and map side by side. This is more of an app level setting, but worth a mention nonetheless. Users can change the provider used to get their location. By default, the app is configured to use the integrated provider, i.e. your phone's internal GPS. But they can change it and connect to external receivers, and external receivers are pretty useful if you want to increase your accuracy to, say, sub-centimeter, or if you want to get access to the GNSS metadata, things like PDOP, or if you want to increase the frequency of location updates. Internal receivers are typically running at 1 Hertz, so 1 update a second, but some receivers can push that all the way up to 20 Hertz. Additionally, you can add a provider by file and in turn play NMEA track logs in order to provide your locations. This is useful for demos when you can't get any GPS because you're inside, or if you need to fix your location. While we're talking about providers, there is another option. You can use the location of a drone to provide the location to QuickCapture. This is achieved through the integration between ArcGIS QuickCapture and SiteScan for ArcGIS. While the drone operator flies the drone, you can use QuickCapture to record the locations of anything of interest as either points, lines, or polygons, along with associated attributes. Essentially, this is done by tapping the appropriate QuickCapture project button. Then you can instantly transmit this information to other teams in the field via ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. The benefit of such workflows is that information coming from the drone can be pushed straight into ArcGIS. Web maps and dashboards can therefore be fed with near real-time spatial information. QuickCapture 1.9 was released in December 2020. In terms of updates and improvements, we're continually making improvements to make the application more robust, focusing on performance, memory management, and network stability. In terms of these new configuration options, you can now configure project user input lists with the other option. This basically means that the user can enter a value that's outside of the list published with the project. Additionally, you can now set the location of Capture GIS features to be either the location when the project button was pressed or the location when the photo was taken. This is useful for oriented imagery workflows, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. You can now pass location from QuickCapture to Survey 123 to use in the launch survey when launched using a link button. And finally, you can change the label size of buttons in the designer now too. We've added support for an icon gallery. So this means on top of uploading your own icons, you can now choose from a range of icons curated by Esri. This should help you give your projects a good head start. Better templates. So we're always adding new templates, but we've made a big change in the way they work. In the past, templates were projects and layers. Now they can be based on ArcGIS solutions, meaning that a new template can now include QuickCapture project, dashboards, and feature layer views. And don't forget, you don't have to use the Esri templates. You can make and share your own. Here is an example, the Occupancy Counter project used to count the number of people currently at the beach. As people enter and leave, the dashboard updates, indicating how close the beaches are to capacity and whether or not they should be closed. QuickCapture is great for capturing photos along with your features as attachments. You just tap on a button and the camera launches and you take a picture of what you see. There are many use cases for photo enabling your buttons, including damage assessments, asset inventory and inspections, construction documentation, code violation reports, and field observations. And as buttons and captured features are categorized by type, so too are your photos. But how do you access your photos once they've been captured? Typically, you'll be asking questions like, how does what I see in this photo relate to what I see on the ground? i.e., what was the direction the camera was facing? Or do I have a photo that can tell me the condition of my asset based on its location? Or do I have another picture of this same asset from another perspective? Now, answering some of these questions using web map pop-ups can be a tricky process, especially if you have lots of features in your map. So here we will introduce oriented imagery. This is the solution for mapping and managing oblique imagery. And when I say oblique, I mean photos taken with your phone. By capturing properties using QuickCapture variables about the device and the camera when the picture was taken, we can exploit this functionality. For a given photo, we're talking about the location of the camera, where it was pointing, its height above ground, and also information on its lens. The best way to explain oriented imagery is to show you how it works. First of all, let's take a look at the traditional way of finding a photo of your asset. You essentially go into a web map, load in your layer, and then click on a feature and check the attachment to see if it covers what you're interested in. Using oriented imagery, the workflow is slightly different in that you don't need to click on the feature, you instead click on the asset that you're interested in. When I do this, I can bring up the photo or photos that cover my asset. I can see the location that the photo was taken and the footprint of the photo on the map. I can even zoom in to the photo and you'll see that the footprint on the map also updates at the same time. And if there are multiple photos covering my asset, I'm also able to easily and quickly switch between them, shifting my perspective. I can even see the location where I've clicked on the map within the photo. So what we're doing here is we're synchronizing your photos and what you can see within your photos with what you can see on the map. So let's show you how to enable oriented imagery in your projects. You simply go into your projects, and then for the layer that you want to enable oriented imagery on, you simply go into Enable Oriented Imagery and choose this option. So this goes through and creates the oriented imagery item. It creates the additional fields that you need within your feature layer to support oriented imagery, and it also maps the required variables to those new fields so that you can start populating them with the information that you need. So you can see that we've now got camera heading, true north, mapped with the appropriate camera heading variable, camera pitch, camera roll, horizontal field of view, vertical field of view, far distance, near distance, camera height above ground, and the acquisition date. So now we just need to save the project. And when we take this project out into the field, we're now going to be able to have all photos captured working with oriented imagery. Okay, let's open up the project and enter in the police officer ID. Click Done. And now tap the collision button. And when we take the photo, we'll have all the metadata required to view that image within the oriented imagery viewer. And now when we view the incident in the OIC viewer, you can see we've got much greater situational awareness and know exactly the direction the camera was pointing when the photo was taken. Okay, so a few things to note if you want to make sure that your photos match up with what you see on the map. The first one is make sure that you get the best accuracy for your locations when you're capturing records. One option is to use an external GNSS receiver. Of course, that can increase the accuracies, as I said before, down to centimeter accuracy with the right receiver. In terms of compass, obviously that's important in terms of making sure that the footprint you see in the oriented imagery viewer is pointing in the right direction. Then you should limit magnetic interference around the device. So rocks, metal objects, etc. Can have a magnetic interference. And you can also set the magnetic declination. The good thing about 1.9 is that this is done automatically for you. So it will use the NOAA model to work out what the magnetic declination is for your particular location. Pitch and roll, the only thing you need to worry about is to make sure that you're only taking photos in portrait or landscape, not in between, and make sure you use the setting to use the location of your photos to set the location of the captured feature. This avoids the issue where you press the button, launch the camera, and then walk 200 yards before taking the photo. And then there's a disconnect between the location of the point and the location of the photo. Okay, what's next? So QuickCapture is typically updated every 8 weeks or so, and we add features based on research projects and, most importantly, user feedback. So if the app is missing something that you need, please raise it as an idea through the ideas page of the QuickCapture GeoNet site. In terms of our plans, in the short term, we're looking to add the ability to display coordinates within the project page. This is so, for example, you can share your USNG coordinate with other team members. We're also adding support for multiple photos. So at the moment, I tap a button, I capture a photo, and it's limited to one. So the idea is to allow you to attach multiple photos to a single captured feature. We also want to add support for domains or coded value domains in project user inputs. And we also want to provide support for multiple project user inputs for a project. At the moment, we limit the number of project user inputs to one, but we've had good feedback to say that extending this would be valuable to multiple workflows. In the longer term, we're looking at bringing the location tracking service functionality into QuickCapture, meaning that users can share their last known location and also record tracks against the ArcGIS tracking service. We want to add support for dark theme. One of the main reasons for doing that is to improve battery consumption. And we're looking to add support for the sort and search of projects within the application. People have asked for an Apple Watch version of QuickCapture. We are looking into this, but in the short term, we've created a Apple Watch version of the UC Fun Run app, and we hope that if you do have an Apple Watch, that you download the app and give it a try. In terms of resources, the first is GeoNet. Come here for access to blogs and videos to submit your ideas or vote on other ideas, and of course, get your questions answered. Or the early adopter community, come here to test out the latest beta build and make sure that what we're planning to release will meet your requirements. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up and look forward to answering some of your questions.
Okay, well, thank you all for your attention. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. Today we have Jonathan Hashthorpe, Mandy Lee, and Jonathan Pies, and they are going to help us answer some of the questions that you have been posting so far. Of course, if you have more questions, you can still post them. So I'm going to start with the PDF slides. Some of you were asking, are the PDF slides available? They are not. I thought they were going to be posted, but they are not. So if you like to have them, just email quickcapture@esri.com, and we will be happy to send them to you. John, this is for you. Is there a plan to allow users to enter more attribute information from the button selection?
So just in terms of allowing users to enter more information, we do this using user inputs. And as we mentioned, there's project user inputs where the user enters the information before pressing buttons, and button user inputs where they enter the information after they press the button. So I think this question relates to the latter, button user inputs. And at the moment, the limitation is that you can only have a single button user input for a button. At the moment, we have plans to increase the number of project user inputs to 3, but no definite plans to increase the number of button user inputs. The thinking about this is that if we have too many button user inputs that appear or pop up after the user presses a button, it could slow down the workflow, and we want QuickCapture to be quick. That being said, we're always keen to take feedback from users. So if you do have requirements, then feedback to us via GeoNet, and we'll review any feedback that you have.
Thank you, John. Here's another one for you. Do you have to always use a hosted layer in ArcGIS Online, or can I have QuickCapture work against my enterprise feature layers?
So yeah, QuickCapture works against enterprise deployments. So you can use either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. And I mentioned the versions, but from 10.7 onwards, you're able to use ArcGIS. Well, 10.7.1 onwards, you're able to use QuickCapture out of the box, and even 10.6 if you do some manual configuration.
Okay, but in enterprise, they don't have to be hosted layers, right? They can be in Oracle.
No, exactly. So that can be coming from your SQL Server database,
awesome.
whichever database you've configured ArcGIS
Enterprise
to work against.
This question is for Mandy. Can QuickCapture be used to update attribute information of existing features?
Thanks, Ishmael. Well, the short answer is no. Every time you tap a button, QuickCapture always add a new feature. If you want to update existing attributes, it's recommended that you use Survey 123 or Field Maps.
Thank you, Mandy. John, another one for you. Is there a plan to make it so QuickCapture projects can be shared publicly outside of a premium hub environment?
In short, no. I mean, at the moment, if you do want to create a QuickCapture project and share it publicly so that people can download it, the project and the app without any kind of login requirement, then they do need to have that hub premium license. So yeah, at the moment, no plans to change that. That is a requirement for crowdsourcing applications.
Okay, here's another one. I want to use QuickCapture to collect traffic counts, but I need to see the counter per vehicle type in the interface.
Yep, so that's an interesting requirement. We've definitely had people asking about that in the past for perhaps doing counts of animals at speed. So I think the requirement here is to have some kind of counter or incrementer within the project so that you can basically start tapping the numbers up for a particular feature type and then submit it. So at the moment, that's not supported. If you do have that requirement, then get back to us through GeoNet or raise it as an idea. One thing I would say is that take a look at the Occupancy Counter project on the trials. And basically what we did here was we set up a project to count the number of people entering and exiting the beach. So effectively here, each button tap creates a new feature, but by capturing a feature for each entry, or in your case, car or vehicle you see, you can then summarize all the submitted records within the feature service. So that may be something that will get close to what you need within the current limitations of the application.
Great. Mandy, can QuickCapture work offline?
Yeah, the answer is yes, of course. You can use QuickCapture offline, but you can also configure an offline map like TPK, VTPK, and MMPK to your QuickCapture project, and you can take it to the fields without network connection.
Okay, so help me understand this. If I don't configure an offline map, can I use the application offline?
Of course, the answer is yes. You can still use QuickCapture to collect data, collect point line polygons. And once when you're offline, you won't be able to access the map because by default, we're going to use the Esri default base map. But when you connect it back to online, it will show the default base map.
Okay, but if I configure my project
yes,
with a VTPK, then I can use the map even offline, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Mandy, is there a version for Windows?
Yes, QuickCapture is across the platform. You can use it on Windows, Android, and iOS, no problem. And also, yeah, of course, Windows tablet.
Okay. Let me check here. Oh, this one. Why don't the labels of my buttons translate into attributes?
So they're separate things. So within the designer or within a QuickCapture project, if you go to the appearance tab, you see your buttons and you're able to configure their color, shape, size, the labels. This is all about making the button clear and intuitive for the user, so they know which one to press. And then if you go to the data tab, you can configure exactly what values are written to the appropriate attributes when that feature is captured. So they're two separate things. You can make them align or you can make them completely separate. But yeah, the label is just a display thing within the designer and then ultimately the project.
Thank you, John. Mandy, I want users to enter nodes after making an observation. What can I do?
Well, if you have a node field in the feature layer, then it's recommended that you assign a button user input to that test field. So basically, if you have a test field and you want a user to enter any content after tapping a button, assign a button user input. And then on the mobile app, when user tap the button, a dialog will show up to ask for content input. And that's where you can collect test input to the node field.
Awesome, thank you. John, for the collection of lines and tracks, can you specify an offset distance to the location of the user?
So in terms of offsetting the geometry, which is what people tend to want to do, that's not supported out the box. But what you could do is you could configure different buttons. So for example, with the simple scenario where you're capturing, sidewalk left and sidewalk right, and you have a button for each, you could have a button which specifies an offset of 5 meters, and you would capture 5 as an attribute. And then you can have another set of buttons with 15 meters. And once you capture the information with the offset as an attribute, you could then do some post-processing in ArcGIS Pro. Perhaps if you were also capturing the bearing of the, well, you can't do that with lines, but if you had the offset, you'd be able to basically apply that using some ArcGIS Pro spatial tools.
Awesome. There is a question about specific plans for hands-free functionality. The reality is that we already support hands-free functionality. In other words, you can use your voice to tap a button. You don't have to touch it. This is supported in English only in iOS, and there are instructions in a blog that we recently published to set up QuickCapture in this way. In this scenario, for example, the labels are critical because if you want to push a button, you have to speak out the label.
So I'll ask you another one, Ishmael. So when would you use QuickCapture versus Survey 123?
Okay, so well, QuickCapture is specifically designed for rapid data collection workflows. So if you want people to basically collect information with minimum interaction with the device, that's QuickCapture. Survey 123 sits on the other side of the spectrum. We spend a lot of time in Survey 123 making sure that the interaction of the user with the device is fluent, and you can go through dialogues and answer many questions. So think about this. Quick field observations, QuickCapture. If you need to collect a lot of attributes for a particular observation, that will be Survey 123. That's basically it. There are some workflows where you can actually do relatively quick data capture with Survey. That we had a question about the traffic counts. Actually, Survey could be a good solution for that. There is a specific control widget experience for counters. It's called the spinner appearance for integer. And I have seen people using that instead of QuickCapture. One unique feature of QuickCapture, though, is nested data collection, which John explained very well, right? The ability to collect a line as you are moving, and at the same time, you can snap photos along the way or even start other lines. That is truly unique about QuickCapture. No other application can do
that. Just a quick question on, can barcodes be scanned in addition to taking photos? That's something that we do have an enhancement request for. So it's in our backlog. Again, with these kind of requirements, reach out to us through GeoNet or raise it as an idea so we understand how many people want it. But yeah, we are aware of that requirement.
Okay. Oh, I saw again a question about the slides. Sorry about not posting the slides, not making them available to you right in the website, but you can email quickcapture@esri.com and request the slides from us. We will be happy to share. Oh, Mandy, one for you. Is there a plan to allow multiple project user inputs?
Yeah, like John has talked in the slides, we do have plan to, we're actually working on it. We will support multiple project user input in the coming release after UC. And if you sign up for our beta or like early adopter community, then we'll be, as soon as we have a candidate ready to go, we will post it there and you can have the first try on this multiple project user input feature.
When do you think we will have the beta available? Is it like 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Well, stay tuned. It's gonna be very soon after UC, so
right after
before August. Yeah,
we should get it out the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
There is a question about licensing. What licenses, John, do I need to use QuickCapture?
So QuickCapture is included with the field worker user type. So it's the same as Survey 1, 2, 3 and field maps. But you can also, if you do have an editor user type, you can buy a standalone QuickCapture license in order to use the application.
What about public surveys, public projects?
So we touched on this briefly before, but if you have a project and you want to share it publicly, and that means that someone could go and scan a barcode to access it, download it, and not require any login whatsoever, then the organization needs to be licensed with a Hub Premium license. And once that's the case, then you're able to go into the designer and share your projects publicly, and that's an option that's available there. Just be mindful that you won't have the signed in user information. So if you're going to use like a variable to capture the username, then that wouldn't be there. You'd have to capture it using maybe a project or a button user input.
Right. There is a question also about what is the long-term product roadmap for QuickCapture? Will these be ever folded into other products? We have no plans to really stop development on ArcGIS QuickCapture. We have a great team, lots of users excited about the product, so we will continue evolving the product. The design of the application really doesn't lend itself to having it put into kind of another application, like loading another application with more functionality. So we will keep just keeping QuickCapture as a separate application for the time.
And we got one for Mandy regarding so will there be a way to import data from our running watches, Garmin watches in particular, to the QuickCapture app? I'd love to participate in the UC Fun Run, but I don't carry my phone while running, and I have an Android.
Oh, okay.
Mandy.
Wow. Yeah, thanks. Well, the UC Run Apple Watch app is, of course, is for iOS and Apple Watch only. We did it for this particular UC Run event only. And be noted, it's not a QuickCapture app. It is just for this UC Fun Run event, and it doesn't support Android Watch in this particular case. And of course, you won't be able to import and export data between the Watch app and the QuickCapture app.
Yeah. Well, having said this though, if you can also enter your data manually for the UC Run. So if you go into the FAQ in the website for the UC Run, you will see that you can actually submit data through a GPX file or a Garmin file. We will be happy to take it. Even if you run in the running mill, you can enter your distances manually.
Okay, I just had a question come in. Is there a trial version of the application? How long? You can go to the store, iOS, Android, Windows. and you can search and download the QuickCapture application. If you don't have your own ArcGIS Line account, you just need to use the option to continue without signing in, and then you'll get access to a range of fully functional projects. And the projects contain links, so you can view the data you submit in dashboards and web maps as well. So a great way to start testing and see the various applications that people are using the app for. Of course, these are public projects, so you submit your data to them and everyone will be able to see that data. But yeah, a great way to start testing things out.
John, is it possible to take measurements based on oblique imagery?
So yes, it is possible, but in terms of our implementation, it's pretty tricky. Within the oriented imagery tools, you can do measurements, but you require a DTM or some kind of surface for that to actually work. So the workflows that we're allowing people to easily support within QuickCapture using the variables don't readily support measurements. But again, if you have this requirement, let us know, and you know, we can see what we can do to start working towards making that functionality more accessible to more users.
Do you have any advice for people who want to configure a custom map in QuickCapture? For example, a map that shows features that other people have been collecting around you.
Yeah, so we covered the fact that, you know, each project can be configured to have a base map, and that base map can be a web map. So the trick here, well, I mean, what happens when you tap on buttons, you capture records, you'll see those local records on the map. So you'll see the points and lines that you've captured, but then when you send them, they'll disappear from the map because they've been sent to ArcGIS. If you still want to see that data, and you know, data submitted by yourself, but as Ishmael said, other users, then what you need to do is create a web map and then add the same layers that you have within your project. Save that web map and then set that web map as the map for your project. And that basically means that as the data gets uploaded to ArcGIS, the local features in the map will disappear. But then as the map refreshes, you'll see those submitted records within the map. So yeah, this is the recommended way so you can see data submitted by yourself and other users as well.
One more for you, John. Can a button be configured to collect data for 2 features simultaneously?
In short, no. So each button is configured to point to a single layer. And when for a point-based button, you press a button, that is a feature. So one button can only capture one feature. You know, we've been talking about nested data capture. You can capture 2 features simultaneously, but they are separate features. They could be going to the same layer, but they're not the same feature. So I'm not sure if it was just a...
Can you speak about compatibility with attribute rules? Specifically, the question is, can QuickCapture use attribute rules to collect additional info?
So I think, I mean, my understanding of that question is that you can configure it so that you're writing or basically values are calculated dynamically when at the time that your button's pressed. For example, you could create a field in your feature layer for speed, and then you could assign a speed variable to that field. And that means that when the user is out in the field, you know, maybe traveling in a car, they press a button in the project, we'll get this, or QuickCapture will get the speed from the GPS or the device, and they'll be able to write that value to the field of the captured record. And we have a range of variables covering, you know, all different types of GNSS metadata, speed, the signed in user, information coming from your device sensors like pitch, roll, compass, etc. So yes, I think that's the grasp of that question, but yeah, you can use variables to automatically calculate and write information to your captured records.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for your attendance. The team is available to you. You can connect with us during the conference. We will be happy to have one-on-one conversations with you. Thank you, Jonathan, and Mandy, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.